So as you can see, we have so much going on here at USD related to entrepreneurship, venture development, and social venture development. And Brant Cooper is somebody who knows a lot about all of this stuff, so we're very excited to have him here today. Brant Cooper helps organizations big and small innovate. He is the co-author of the New York Times bestseller, The Lean Entrepreneur, and he's a sought-after speaker, advisor, and mentor. Brant has over 16 years of experience helping companies bring innovative products to market. His startup career includes Tumbleweed, Timestamp, Wild Packets, Encode, and many others. He's experienced IPO, acquisition, rapid growth, and crushing failure. Brant previously authored The Entrepreneur's Guide to Customer Development, the first purpose-written book to discuss lean startup and customer development concepts, earning a distribution of over 50,000. And he's worked with thousands of entrepreneurs across the globe. Brant is also the co-founder of the Moves the Needle group, which has advised the innovation practices of such leading companies as Qualcomm, Intuit, Capital One, Pitney Bowes, and Hewlett-Packard. So we're very excited to have Brant here today to share with us about lean entrepreneurship principles. Please give me a hand in welcoming Brant.
So, how many people here, has anybody seen me talk before? So I actually, no fair, Annette, not you. I actually speak more at USD than any other San Diego college, which is actually kind of a cool thing, I think. And it says something about USD, I think. Not that I'm not great or anything, but it means that they're actually trying to teach entrepreneurship in a new way, which I think actually is important. So by now, pretty much everybody has heard of some of this stuff, right? So people are familiar with customer development, Steve Blank's work? No? All right, we've got some real noobs. This is awesome. Lean startup, anybody heard of the concept of lean startup? All right, some people have heard of lean startup. So basically, Steve Blank wrote his book, actually it was a compilation of lecture notes in 2002 called The 4 Steps to the Epiphany. And it was all about creating a new way that we do tech startups, is really what his background was in. Eric Ries, who wrote The Lean Startup, was a student of his, and Steve Blank invested in his first startup. And he came out with that book in 2011. My first book was sort of a cheat sheet to this whole customer development lean startup movement. It came out in 2010. Eric Ries really took this stuff mainstream. So his book, totally blew up. And then I wrote this Lean Entrepreneur. I kind of describe Eric Ries's book was really the why, and my book was the how-to. So really kind of got into the deep in how to do this. And actually just yesterday, I've got a new book project that launched called The Lean Brand. So that's even sort of taking this stuff more to the business side of the house. So the idea is Eric Ries had a development background, and there's these techniques in software design called agile development methodologies, which allows you to get code written quickly and out in front of customers so you can validate your ideas. And the idea around some of what I've written in the lean startup and customer development is, can we take some of those same sort of scientific principles and move them over to the business side of the house? And what you'll find is that this is also very relevant for social impact. So normally people, when they come and they want me to talk to audiences, the first thing they want me to do is inspire people to go out and change the world, right? And so I think, well, what I really ought to do is stand up and tell everybody how visionary they are, right? So, I mean, tell me, do you guys feel like visionaries? Do we have visionaries in the room? Are you visionaries? No visionaries here. Couple, 3, 4? You see, in the moment you get... No, see, actually, you're not a visionary. So all the people that kept your arms down, you're spot on. So where does this visionary concept come from? So this is Mark Zuckerberg, circa 2004. He's moved from Palo Alto from Boston to Palo Alto, and he's kind of hanging out in his startup pad. There's actually a keg of beer sitting in front of him, and he's got this cup, and he's all like, oh, you're interviewing me. Should I put this cup down? What should I do? He's, dressed in a T-shirt, shorts. He actually is dressed worse than I am. His shorts look like they're circa 1984, if you ask me. But the interview asks Mark, so what's your vision for Facebook? What are you hoping this to become? And Mark goes, nah, some people want to change the world. I hope to make a really cool college directory. So this is his vision, yet we call him a visionary. Why is he a visionary? Why do we consider Mark Zuckerberg a visionary? Anybody want to hazard a guess?
Because he knows exactly what he wants.
Really? Back then, he said he wanted to make a cool college directory. Is that what he wants? He's like way more than that now, right? No, we call people a visionary after they've become successful, after they become a billionaire. We look back into history and go, yep, look, he was a visionary. Look what he created, this multi-billion-dollar company with hundreds of millions of users. How did he do that? Well, it was because he was a visionary, right? It's almost like we just oh, well, he was a visionary. He was born a visionary. We can't do that. You have to be born a visionary to do these things. So I always urge my audience, the people that raise their hand, if you actually put visionary in your LinkedIn title or whatever on your profile and you're not a billionaire, you might want to consider removing it. But this theme has been around for a long time, right? Visionaries, Henry Ford, Steve Jobs, everybody considers Steve Jobs a visionary, right? Thomas Edison, the term maybe was invented for Thomas Edison. And it's funny because these guys they didn't discourage this, right? Thomas Edison loved being considered a visionary. He was actually called the Wizard of Menlo Park. And the Cub reporters would come in to interview the great Thomas Edison, and he would go he'd go pose at the window and looking out at he was looking to the future, right? So the media handler would go, shh, don't bother the great Thomas Edison. He's thinking of the future. And really what Thomas Edison did is he would comb patent archives to figure out what was the next big thing that he was going to do. And he had a whole team of engineers. He actually had one of those genius engineer silence partners that nobody knows the guy's name because Thomas Edison was the face of innovation, right? He invented the light bulb. Well, actually, he couldn't get a patent the first time he tried to patent the light bulb because the patent had already been granted to somebody else. In the time that he was inventing the light bulb, it was purely a race between a number of different entrepreneurs to try to figure out what the right material was going to be to create the filament inside the light bulb. And so with most of these guys, what you want to do is do what they do, not what they say they do. And really what they're about, all of these guys, is it's more about open collaboration, and that's how innovation really happens. It's when it's out in the open, and it's competing and cooperating. Silicon Valley, when it first started out, the companies there, this is all government money, by the way. Nobody tells that side of the story, but the early Silicon Valley was all government money being spent on defense-related companies. And when they were first creating the silicon and the chips, these companies were actually helping each other overcome obstacles in order to compete against each other, right? Because it was sort of this thing that you could see that the rising tide lifts all boats, right? So in early innovation, collaboration is actually what allows you to get over these humps and then go off and you can, agree to compete later. Henry Ford is a great story too because he invented the car, right? No, he didn't invent the car. There were hundreds of automobile manufacturers when he first started. His vision when he first started out was to create a tractor. He wanted to create automated farm equipment. Why? His dad was a farmer, and that's what he was going to do when he was growing up. His dad just assumed what he was going to do is plow the fields. He didn't want to plow the fields. What a drag, He was just like a teenager. I don't want to do what my dad's doing. What a drag. So he's going to invent a tractor. Turns out farmers, though, are not early adopters, and so he had to pivot from doing tractors. And what his ingenious vision was, in the end, was actually how do you create a modern-day assembly line in order to reduce the price of automobiles so that the people that worked in the factory could also afford to buy one. So up until that point, most of the automobiles were purchased by rich people. Well, the real market opportunity is, can you drive the cost down and make it so everybody can own a car? And so he actually took components that already existed, these moving belts that were from farming, from grain industries that would move along from worker to worker. The produce would stay on the on the belt. He took these replaceable parts from the sewing machine industry, and he put these things all together and created this amazing assembly line. It was really the beginning of what's now known as lean manufacturing, where you would actually complete the construction of one vehicle at a time as it rolled down this assembly line. Well, so that was a great idea. It was new. He succeeded. He lowered the price, and just Ford Motor Company just exploded, just took off, dominated the market. The thing is that his assembly line was most optimal if he produced one kind of car. And so there's a famous quote, right? He says, well, you can have a Model T, you can have any Model T, any color you want, as long as the color is black, right? So the point is that the moment you start changing the options on the car or changing the colors, the assembly line becomes more complex and the costs go up and all these other things. But he was going to stick to this vision. One car, one model, one color, no matter what. This was his vision. He's going to stick with it. And what happened is GE and some of these automobile manufacturers go, well, there's different market segments out there. I can actually build a car for this group over here that's different from that group, and they're going to buy my car. Or I can offer different colors. Or I can offer finance options. And so they started eating into Ford's market share. There's actually these flowery letters that engineers at Ford would write Henry Ford. Dear esteemed Mr. Ford, we would urge you to consider adopting our new clutch or whatever that improves the experience of the driver and makes it more efficient and blah, blah, blah. Henry Ford would go down into his, the factory floor, find that engineer, and fire him on the spot. He did not want innovation. He did not want change. One car, one model, one color. Stock price plummets. Market share plummets. He actually stuck to his vision too long. Visionary? Here's where visionary maybe hurts you, right? Steve Jobs, inventor of the iPhone, right? Disruptive technology. Yeah, is it? So I actually kind of consider the phone itself sustaining innovation, which means it was incremental change in a known market. There were 2 decades of smartphones that preceded the iPhone. What was revolutionary and what really did disrupt the phone market and disrupt the computer market and disrupt the music industry and all these other markets that he's disrupted was that he opened the App Store up to third-party developers. So that suddenly turns a phone into a platform. And if you can ever build a platform, that's where the big win is. Steve Jobs opposed opening up the iPhone App Store to third-party developers. Oh, wait a second. He's a visionary. Why didn't he see it? He had investors telling him he should do it. He had other employees and telling him he should do it. And actually, the market itself was doing it. The market was hacking the phone and doing it by itself. He didn't see it. So are they visionaries? What does it even mean? Well, part of this whole lean startup stuff is actually an attempt to flip this myth on its head. Because this whole myth of, in order to be a great entrepreneur, to have great change in the world, that you have to be tinkering in a garage and have this eureka moment. I mean, why is it always a garage and why is it always tinkering? It's you know, you have this eureka moment and then, out comes this product idea. I now must go build it. My whole life is about building this product that I envisioned. I saw it. And so you hire your engineering team, you hire your sales team, your marketing team, you hire your PR. You're literally burning through hundreds of thousands of dollars a month, and your product's not even built. It takes a year, 2 years maybe to build the product. And then you do this big, huge launch, great big marketing launch, and then crickets. Yeah, you sell a unit to the brother-in-law of somebody that's on the board of your directors. You sell another unit to the sister of the CEO's cousin. I mean, it's all opportunistic. You built the wrong product. The market doesn't care. This is actually how we did startups in the 90s and early 2000s. You'd write a business plan, go convince an investor to give you millions of dollars, hire your engineers, your sales, your marketing, release, nothing. 9 out of 10 failed, 99 out of 100 failed. So really, Steve Blank, this is what he wanted to tackle, was how do we get smarter in building startups? And actually, there's a lot of other things that have transformed, right, to make this the right time. The fact is, if you're building digital products, you can instrument your products, so you know exactly what your customers are doing with your products. Or social media is a way to market incredibly less expensively, and you can measure other things like how do your customers feel about your product. The cost of starting a business has dropped tremendously. So there's all these factors that have kind of come together that sort of make this lean startup stuff make a lot of sense in my view. And so real quickly, what do we mean by lean? A lot of people go, lean, no, that means small. You know, I'm a chihuahua, I'm lean, ergo I have a small vision and I only want to make a small change in the world and I'm inexpensive and cheap and don't spend money. But the Great Dane actually is a lean animal too. So lean does not mean small. Lean simply means that you want to eliminate waste in the value that you're creating. So think about it, yes, you don't want to waste money, but you also don't want to waste your resources. You don't want to waste creativity. You don't want to waste time. So lean comes from lean manufacturing, which describes the way Toyota was building cars in Japan in the 50s. And so the idea is that you have these value-add activities that you're doing that are actually creating the value that you're going to sell to a customer. So you're perhaps assembling the parts of a minivan for a soccer mom. And that assembly are value-add activities, and in lean manufacturing, you want to make that as efficient as possible. And then you have these other activities, say forklifting parts from one side of the warehouse to the other. That might be necessary, but it's not actually creating value. And so you want to eliminate as many of those activities as possible. But it's all in creating this value. You're actually providing something of value to customers. So some people criticize the US manufacturing as going over and learning from the Japanese and coming back with the conclusion that they needed more robots. And so they, sort of fire a bunch of workers and put in all these robots, and it increases efficiency perhaps, and maybe even productivity goes up, and maybe the stock price goes up. Maybe that's what they wanted to do. I don't know. But it's not lean. Lean is in the service of creating this value. So the difference between lean manufacturing and lean startup is, in a startup, you actually don't know the value that you're creating, and you don't know for whom you're creating it. You think you know. You're going to put it in your pitch deck, what you think you know. A few years ago, somebody would have made you write a whole business plan documenting what you think you know. But you actually don't know until a transaction has occurred in the marketplace. Up until then, it's theories, it's guesses, it's hypotheses if you want to be fancy about it. But so what we're trying to do in a lean startup is eliminate waste in the discovery of the value that you're creating and for whom you're creating it. So everything that you're doing, if you're not learning, you're wasting. And so even in the tech startup world, if you're writing a 50-page business plan, in your computer, in your office, as opposed to actually out in the market learning, you're wasting a lot of time. So everything that you want to be doing is focusing on learning about the value that you hope to create, and for whom. And so there's this concept that I'll get into in a little bit called the value stream. So if you go into lean manufacturing, there's all these consultants that help businesses create their value stream, which are all of the business activities that are value creating in the discovery, creation, and delivery of value to a customer. And so in the Lean Entrepreneur, I came up with this tool, which is the value stream discovery tool. So it's you hypothesizing what are these activities that you need to create in order to discover, build, and deliver the value. So the backdrop of all of this is the innovation continuum, because the practices differ based upon where you are. So over on the sustaining side, these are terms coined by Clayton Christensen, Innovator's Dilemma, fantastic book. Everybody should read it, I think. Sustaining side, known markets. Problem is well understood. Solution is well understood. Big businesses exist over on the sustaining side. Universities exist over on the sustaining side, for the most part. They understand the market. They understand how to market and sell and deliver value inside this known market. So in Clayton Christensen's book, he uses hard drives as one of his examples because there's like incredible quantities of data on hard drives from the 80s and the 90s. And so believe it or not, in the 90s, you could get 10 megabytes of hard drive space on a drive that was about this big. 5.25-inch drive held 10 megabytes of data. Yeah, I know, it's true. I might be old enough to remember that. Actually, I managed systems with those drives in there. But so they sold millions of these things. Big, huge companies around selling hard drives, first for mainframes and then to minis and workstations and then computers and servers, 5.25 drives, 10 megabytes of data. So say you're a scientist inside one of these big companies and you can say, listen, I think we can do some real innovation, new processes, new tools, new techniques. We can double the capacity of this hard drive. Yep, I'm going to be able to fit 20 whole megabytes inside this 5.25-inch drive. Goes to the manager of that business unit and says, listen, I think we ought to do this. I think we're going to be able to sell a lot of these. Business unit manager sends his product manager out to the customers. So they go and they do these requirements gathering from the customers. They go out to an IT manager and say, listen, you've got all these 10 megabyte hard drives. I can replace all of those with 20 megabyte hard drives. You're going to double your capacity. It's going to be awesome. Will you buy them? Customer goes, yeah, I need it. I'm about out of space. Will you pay $300 for them? Oh, yeah. That's what I paid last year for the 10. That's great. Good deal. I'll buy them. Product manager goes back to the business unit leader and says, listen, this is the return on investment for doing this innovation work. We're going to be able to kill it. Our margins are through the roof. This is amazing. We're going to make a ton of money. Business unit leader goes, done. Go do it. Sustaining market. Disruptive side, exactly the opposite. Market is not well known. Problems are not that well understood. Solutions are unknown. You're a startup CEO, and you go, wow, this is really cool. I can fit 20 megabytes. I can fit 20 megabytes into a hard drive, 3.5 inches, about the size of an iPhone. Now that's crazy innovation. They're still putting it in 5.25-inch drives. I can put it in a 3.5-inch drive. CEO goes out to that same IT manager and goes, look what I can do. How cool is this? Isn't my technology great? And that IT manager goes, nah, I can't use that. Looks like a paperweight. You've kind of wasted my whole morning. Why are you here? Get out of my office. Don't ever come back. I'll never buy that stupid hard drive. A year later, that IT manager is supporting 1,000 laptops out in the field and is buying thousands of those hard drives. He didn't know. He didn't understand the context. He didn't understand the transformation that was undergoing. Things change. The real point here is that how you interact with your customers is different on the disruptive side versus the sustaining side. On the sustaining side, you could go have conversations with your customers about the problems they have. You can believe what they say. You can ask them for features. You can believe what they say. You can ask them how much they'd be willing to pay. You can believe what they say. If you're tending over to the disruptive side, though, they don't know. Steve Jobs loves to say that he doesn't go and talk to customers, right? Or he didn't go and talk to customers. He actually did, by the way, but nobody could have walked up to an individual when this thing was first being launched and said, hey, you can play this crazy game where pigs launch rocks onto birds on this thing. Do you want that? Could you believe what the customer would say if they, oh, will you pay 99 cents for that? No, you better pay me 99 cents to play that ridiculous game. So over on the disruptive side, your business practices are different than on the sustaining side. And of course, this is the innovator's dilemma because large companies are optimized for executing over here. And so what they don't do very well is figure out how to ask questions differently and how to run experiments and how to discover. They're optimized for execution as opposed to being optimized for discovery. The opposite is actually also true. Until recently, we taught startups to behave like big businesses. Oh, you need processes. Here's how you're going to organize your company. Here's how you do product requirements gathering. Here's how you do surveys and focus groups and all of this stuff that only works on the sustaining side. And so again, a lot of this lean startup and customer development stuff is about using different processes to learn before you execute. So startups face uncertainty. Uncertainty is not the same thing as risk, right? Uncertainty is not knowing. Risk is can we execute? It's risky to execute while not knowing. It's risky to execute while being uncertain of what to execute on. So the whole concept of the lean startup stuff is you've got a bunch of stuff that's in the unknown bucket. I don't really know the answers. They're hypotheses, they're guesses, they're assumptions. So what can I do in this realm of uncertainty in order to learn, move it over into the known bucket, and now I can execute? And so this whole time that you actually have prior to your pitch fest and prior to having your innovation project should be focused upon what do I know based on maybe analogs in the market or based on industry expertise or what do I know and what do I not know? And these things that I don't know, I need to go prove and validate. And now when I'm ready to present to investors or to customers or to whomever, you've actually started proving out your business model. And that's sort of the big change that's happened just even in the last 4 or 5 years, is that investment comes to entrepreneurs who've proven their business model to a certain extent rather than those that have the most impressive business plan or pitch that only documents what their guesses are around that business model. Any questions or challenges up to this point? Feel free to interrupt me at any time. Yeah.
Can you just speak a little to if you're thinking about a social venture and you don't really think about the impact or the value you're trying to create as specifically for a customer, can you speak to how you would apply these principles?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we'll get into that in a little bit. But I mean, the point really around social impact, in my view, is that it's a business. You have to be, rather than sort of deciding up front what your business model is going to look like in terms of how you're going to fund your venture or who you're actually serving. Basically, the problem that you're solving and who you're solving it for ends up dictating the other aspects of your business model. And I can give you some examples in the past. But generally, social impact entrepreneurs just consider themselves entrepreneurs. And all of these things are true for them. And as a matter of fact, there's some traps that I think social impact entrepreneurs fall into that are very analogous to the myth of the visionary. And that's sort of this idea that, I'm going to go and tackle this, I'm going to tackle this problem in this way. And if people tell me that my way won't work, it's because they just don't really have the same values I do, and they don't see what I see, and it's just because they think that social impact entrepreneurship is not important. You can come up with all sorts of excuses of why people don't agree with your solution. And really, in the end, what you have to be open to is the change that you're trying to make, just like Mariah's Gandhi slide. It's really more about committing yourself to the change that you want to see as opposed to committing to the way that you want to change. So we'll get into that a little bit more. But even in like B2B entrepreneurship, it's not as straightforward as, oh, well, here's my customer, and I'm going to create value for that person. In the business-to-business world, you have the users, you have the buyers is different than the decision maker, and you have these partners, and there's this huge big ecosystem that you have to work within, and social impact entrepreneurship is the same way.
How many truly disruptive innovations are there? Over on the right side of your diagram.
Yeah, most people, startups don't really live over here. They're sort of in between. But they come around. Certainly the iPhone ended up being disruptive, even if the technology itself wasn't necessarily disruptive. Twitter was disruptive. Facebook was disruptive. There's a number of different HR applications that came along that, first it was classified ads, and then it was Hotmail, and then it was the Ladders, and then it was LinkedIn, and now there's dozens of other startups that are trying to disrupt LinkedIn. PayPal was certainly disruptive, completely converting completely converting the how people were paying for things. The really super disruptive stuff actually tends to happen inside of large company labs and universities. But unfortunately, often that stuff doesn't see the light of day because of the innovator's dilemma. We haven't really figured out how to even get some of our most disruptive stuff into products that are solving specific problems. But so anyway, this is about hypothesis-driven innovation. Sorry.
Just what you talked about proving out your business model. As far as market sizing goes, what some of the options or...
Yeah, market sizing is mostly BS. So really the idea is instead of Googling market share stuff, you start at the bottom and you try to figure out what's a core market segment. And this is actually the exercise we're going to work on later on. But you should do a bottoms-up approach, which is I've identified this core market segment. This is about the size of it. I can extrapolate from there what the size is if I penetrated that globally. And then what are some adjacent markets that are similar that I could move into? And you kind of do this bottoms-up approach. But really it's why in the tech world, you don't get investments based upon TAMs and target market. Nobody pays attention to that stuff. It's really about how many users do you have now that are engaged with your product and what's your month-over-month growth. That's what gets you money, not all of this other stuff. And the difference is that you start off by getting seed stages, 10K, 20K, 50K, in order to prove the next milestone, which could be, okay, well, now you've got 1,000 users. Can you get to 10,000? And you start, the market size starts to emerge based upon actual work in the market versus, Googling, target markets. So, again, Lean Startup, it's really about the rigor of the scientific method combined with the creativity of inspiration. It's where those two things come together. So we're not trying to kill the inspiration where the ideas come from, where creativity comes from. But once we have those ideas, how can we use the rigor of the scientific method to validate those ideas? So quickly, the other thing that we want to touch on and feeds into the exercise later on is this concept of a market segment. It's really right what you were getting at. You don't want to segment your market sort of in this old school sustaining innovation way, which is around demographics or firmographics. Firmographics are how we describe companies, similar to how we describe people. Demographics is a way to classify customers that you already have, but it doesn't tell you anything about what their needs are or their problems are or whether they should care about the product or services that you're bringing to market. So a market segment is people who share the same pain or passion and speak the same language. And by speak the same language, I mean that those people will actually refer to each other for solutions to that problem or to address that passion. So the silly example here is, if you're building square hats, your target market is blockheads, not cylinder heads, right? The cylinder heads, the hat's not going to fit. So why target them just because they happen to be between 20 and 30 years old? So a couple examples. One of my favorite examples from the tech world, and this is not a social impact world, but it gives you an example of sort of this market segmentation and data and purpose-built experiments. So this AppFog guy, Lucas Carlson, he programs in a computer language called PHP. And he wants cloud services for people that program in PHP. And he's hanging out on this website called Hacker News. I don't know if you guys hang out on that, but it's for people that program. And he's got a group of people there that program in PHP. And they're all kind of going, yeah, we need these cloud services. Just kind of like this other product, Heroku, that does cloud services for another programming language called Ruby on Rails. Okay, so he decides he's going to go build this startup. But it's late one Friday night, and his wife is all like, no, it's late, come to bed, you can work on this over the weekend. So he puts up a one-page website, a landing page, says, Heroku for PHP, sign up here. Takes that URL, posts it on Hacker News, goes to bed. Wakes up the next morning, 800 people are signed up for a program that he does not have. He has not written a line of code. He's like, oh my God, I got to get to work. So he starts programming away, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks go by. He goes, it's going to take me 6 months to build this program. I've got to build this rock solid platform so people love it, but are my customers going to remain? Are they still going to be there? Are they going to go build it? What's going to happen? So 4 weeks has gone by. He's got 4,000 people signed up. He's all like, what do I do? And he decides what he wants to do is uncover those that, out of that 4,000, the 2 dozen or 3 dozen that really have this pain, that he really knows would become customers. So he comes up with this marketing survey. This is not a sustaining innovation best practices marketing survey. 9 questions with radio boxes and check boxes, and you can finish it in 9 seconds. This is like 9-page survey, huge open-ended questions. Why are you here? What are you trying to accomplish? What's the meaning of life? What's your favorite color? What's your second favorite color? Anything to get these people not to fill out the survey. It takes you an hour to fill out the survey. I do not want you to fill out the survey unless you really, really need to get into this program. So he sends that survey out. 2,000 people filled out the survey. It's like, all right, I'm really onto something. But actually, what was amazing about it is that he actually read every one of those surveys and did this data mining on top of these surveys, and he discovered that if I just build these 3 features, that people are asking for and put that up, I think this will work. So that's what he did. It took him a week, put it 3 features, built the back end just for that, released it, and just grew like a rocket ship. Raised $10 million. He just recently, like 6 months ago, had an exit. So that's what we consider a minimum viable product. What's the minimum I need to produce for the product to be viable? Viable is as important as minimum. It doesn't mean throwing crap out there and seeing if people will use it. What is the minimum I need to put out there that actually provides the value that I think my customers want? So you fall a little short, you iterate, you add some feature, you remove some features. Then once you get it out there, that's the unknown. What is my product out there that is going to create this value? That's the unknown. Once he discovers that, once he grows, now he knows who his market is, right? He knows which features to add because they're being asked for from this core constituency. He knows which features, he knows which bugs to fix. So this is what we call product market fit. It's when you get this organic growth, when the market is pulling the product out of you that tells you what you need to work on. And what is the data that he's looking at? Well, he has a hypothesis. He says, listen, if people are satisfied with my product, they're going to spin up a new server once a month, and they're going to check the dashboard on a daily basis. So he puts a stake in the ground, hypothesis-driven development. He releases it, and he watches what people are actually doing. If they don't achieve that metric, there's only one of 3 things that could be wrong. Either the metric was wrong, or well, people are checking the dashboard once every 3 days. All right, maybe I can improve the dashboard. Maybe it's good enough. That's 1. 2, he's got the wrong market segment. They're busy spinning up mostly Ruby on Rails servers instead. Or 3, there's something wrong with the product, right? So these are what we call actionable metrics. It's not how many hits on the website. It's not how many mobile downloads. It's about what is it that is engaging this user? What proves that the user is satisfied, that they're getting value out of it? So I wanted to give, here's another quick example. People know Zappos, right? So this stuff is not new. Zappos is a great classic Mechanical Turk experiment. So when the founder of Zappos first started out back in the late 90s, it was actually hard to build a website. So he was going to sell shoes online, right? He didn't know if people were going to buy shoes online. It seems obvious now, but it wasn't obvious then. They have to fit, they have to look good. So what he did is he built a website, but he didn't source any shoes. He actually walked down to a shoe store right down the street, took photographs of the shoes that are on the store wall, walked back to his office, upload those pictures onto his website. Somebody would buy a pair of shoes, he would walk back down to the store, buy the shoes, and ship them to the customer, right? Proving that people will do something that you don't know if they'll do. So in my book, there's a number of different social impact entrepreneurs. Again, I sort of consider them the same thing. You have to figure out who your constituents are, who's your user, who's the decision maker, how you're going to fund it. All of these things might be unknown. So my favorite is, have people heard of the Embrace? So this was extraordinary, right? They went out into the market at first thinking that they were going to go to underdeveloped countries and provide them with incubators so that they could save babies born prematurely, preemies. It turned out, though, once they went out into the world, right, outside of their heads and into the real world, the problem wasn't preemies as much, it was undernourished babies. And so the moms would be holding the babies and could keep them warm close to their body, but the moment they had to go to work, they actually had to set the baby down, and that babies would get hypothermia. And so this would cause long-term psychological and physiological problems. And so that was the problem that they ended up sort of pivoting to. And what was extraordinary, I think just super innovative, is they built this sleeping bag, and on one side the baby would be, and on the other side they had to have an energy source. But what sort of energy source are you going to get out in underdeveloped countries? And what's that? Yeah, so solar might work, but what is it actually heating? So what they did is they took paraffin. And so as paraffin melts, it actually releases energy, and it would warm the baby inside the sleeping bag. And so you could utilize solar energy to melt the paraffin. If they could put it on a hot sheet of metal, or they could put it over the fire to melt the paraffin, put it in the other sleeve of the sleeping bag, and as it warmed, it released the energy that would keep the baby warm. So I think that was phenomenal, and to me it's a good example of getting outside of your head and getting out into the market to understand what are the problems that are really out there that you can solve. The other one I was going to bring up is not up there. I thought I had added it. I probably added it to the wrong slide. And I can't remember the name of it. But basically it was this guy, young guy, early 20s. His sister died of cancer, and so he became what he really wanted to do, right? What he really wanted to do was cure cancer. But he's just a young guy, so how is he going to go do this? And what he decided to do is that he was going to do some walk, to raise money. And he started talking to some of these existing large charities that are in this space. And basically they said, listen, there was no way you're going to raise any money that's going to be anything more than a drop in the water of what we're already doing. And through his different interactions, he became pretty frustrated and a little bit jaded around sort of the whole concept of a nonprofit, right? Because oftentimes what happens in that particular business model is that the value that's being created gets steered towards the people that are giving you the money versus the problem that you're trying to solve. I see this actually all the time in nonprofits. And so he became committed, I'm not going to be a nonprofit. And so he became a for-profit business, and he was sort of trying to figure out, okay, I want to help the cancer problem, but I can't just go raise money. So he's kind of committed to the change, but he's not sure what the solution is going to be. And he talked to enough people that he found out from the people in the medical community that really the change that could happen is preventative, right? Can you actually start with children and teach them to live healthier lifestyles, not get into smoking and food, eating healthy and all these to prevent cancer? And so he was thinking about developing this curriculum, and he went back and he talked to these large cancer institutions again, and they said, oh yeah, we've got the curriculums. So then he went and talked to the teachers, and they said, well, the problem with that is, A, I need to be trained in it. B, it has to be the whole quarter would have to be dedicated to that curriculum. And C, it doesn't adhere to the standards that we have to teach to. And so they all had the curriculum, but it was sitting on their shelves. And so his big innovation was to actually create cancer prevention education that fit to the core curriculum that had to be taught, right? So, sort of a trivial example is that teaching kids how to calculate the BMI index, right? Their body mass index was a math problem. And so he was actually able to distribute this curriculum to hundreds of thousands of students to have that sort of an impact. So I think I'm about out of time. So this is sort of the value stream discovery tool. We could talk about some other time. But I wanted to end with something that's sort of similar, slightly different than what Gandhi said, is that the true visionaries relentlessly pursue change, not the vision of how to achieve that change. So I actually think all of those people on those early slides are visionary. I think that Steve Jobs was a visionary. The point is that he wasn't a visionary because he foresaw the Apple iPhone back when he was tinkering in his garage. He's a real visionary because he surrounded himself with amazing people like John Ives, who really invented the iPhone. And he surrounded himself, and he when he was wrong, he was able to change his mind, right? So he ended up opening up the App Store to third-party developers because the market had spoken. So true visionaries are not the ones that stick to a vision no matter what. True visionaries are those that are able to hear the market and then go to where the market is leading them. And really the size of the change that you want to make is directly proportional to how relentlessly you pursue it. So I personally don't believe everybody needs to change the whole world. Some people need to become more innovative inside of their large enterprises. Some people need to support their family and maybe somebody else's family. Some people want to make the huge change, and I think that that's great. But it's directly proportional to how relentlessly you're going to pursue that change. So thank you very much.